Thanks, colleagues. Can we take our seats again, please? Okay, thanks. We're on to item 11 on the agenda. Councillor Quinn has left the chamber, but he's joined us online, so he's still with us in the meeting. The next paper is electric vehicle charging concession model. Ian's going to take us through the paper.
Good afternoon, everyone. So you can hear me? Yeah. I'll just get started. So the purpose today for this paper is electric vehicle charging and a concession model. So the paper seeks council approval to enter into a concession model in collaboration with 7 other authorities, namely Edinburgh Council, Dumfries and Galloway, Falkirk, Fife, Mid Lothians, Scottish Borders and West Lothian, for the appointment of a single supplier for the future delivery of the infrastructure, the charging network that we have in Clackmannanshire, both existing and our future network. The recommendations are set out in the paper. I won't read them verbatim. However, this approach outlines a real positive step towards a just transition to net zero and builds upon the excellent work that this council has already achieved regarding shifting reduced emissions and electrical infrastructure investment that we've had in Clackmannanshire over the years. The recommendations will reduce the risk for the council by shifting the ongoing management, investment and maintenance of the electric charging points to a concessionaire. There will be fines in place for councils as we move forward for chargers that are not contactless, and there's very high efficiency targets as well. This, combined with our ageing vehicle charging network, leads us to believe that this is the best move forward. Our authority and these other authorities that I mentioned, including Edinburgh, they are not attractive enough on their own for that investment over a 12 to 20 year period. So there's a lot of strength to build on what Robbie said earlier on, and coming together and collaborating and making that offering to the private sector much more attractive. We've only got around 36 chargers at this time, and this investment and improvement fund and the monies that are coming through the Scottish Government gives us a great opportunity to collaborate and be much more as an attractive proposition. So the council would still be able to influence in the ongoing siting of charging stations, so to ensure there's fair coverage and that we don't have chargers sited in, for example, the most affluent areas and the most revenue generation areas. So the council will still have a lot of control with that, and the partnership approach and the collaborative working with SESTRANS and our local authority partners is only possible from all the kind of hard work that my officers have piled into this, including early engagement with their colleagues in legal and finance and procurement. So it's a collaborative procurement process, and what we see today is, as I said, set out in the paper. I'm happy to take any questions on that.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Do we have any questions on the paper? Councillor Law? Councillor Coyne?
See, if we didn't take this recommendation, is there, or what's the risk of that when we get to this point where charge place stop, will our chargers kind of cease, basically, as in people won't be able to use them? But is there a risk that that will happen if we try to kind of go alone rather than going into this grouping with the other authorities?
Thanks, Councillor, for that question. Yes, there are risks associated with not going for this approach. The Charge Place Scotland's administrative body set up by Transport Scotland to administer all the kind of charges across Scotland, and that will cease to exist. So the Scottish Government's really pushing us towards, looking at this sort of approach. We won't have the admin staff or the resources or the capacity to run a back house, admin function within the council. And I think this really represents the only kind of approach that would give us that investment that we need. There is a risk that if we don't go through this approach, we would be on our own again in trying to look to the market on our own, which financially wouldn't stack up. So I think it's a good question, and I think it's something that's what's pushing the timeline is the Charge Place Scotland's coming to an end. So we've got till April 26 now. It was originally ended this year, but they've given us till April 26 to get these arrangements in place.
Sorry, I didn't see your wee nod there. That kind of change in that timescale, is that kind of highlight kind of the difficulty of this process and trying to get this kind of collaborative models going about to kind of give that kind of extra timescale in order to get this fit? Because we do realise that we need to have a solution, and to get those solutions it is going to take a lot of time, capacity, and it's something that we as a council don't really have ourselves. Do you agree?
Yes. Yes, I think there's been some feedback. So we've been quite active members of this collaboration group through the South of Scotland partnership under the kind of leadership of Ryan Butler. There's been a lot of really good daily collaboration and feedback going back to Transport Scotland, Scottish Government, about the realistic timescales. So I think the kind of re-baselining of that deadline has come from the fact that it is going to be tricky. There's a lot of things to consider, but hopefully we're in a better place. So.
Because we're going into this kind of collaboration with other councils, so it will cover quite a big area. Will that have a benefit for the public that it is they're not going to have like a different kind of setup in Clackmannanshire to opposed to where if they were going down to Edinburgh or the Scottish borders or whatnot? Do you think that will benefit the public in having that kind of a wider kind of area covering this kind of same rules?
Yeah, I think that the initial benefits are, firstly, one, to actually be attractive for someone to take over the existing charging network we have, and also our plans for expanding the network in Clackmannanshire. So with trying to do that on our own, it would be nigh on impossible, and the funding that would have been available is not going to be there. The Scottish Government are really steering us towards this kind of private investment model. So I think, yeah, you're right, that's the approach we're looking to take, and I think the public would notice a bigger difference in the quality of the chargers. Like I say, there's going to be quite high performance standards coming into play in terms of being able to pay contactless, where they're sited, the geographical location to different areas. So I think the public would notice a big difference with this investment. If we tried to do this on our own, it wouldn't really be possible.
And just in regards to, obviously we have our own vehicles and we use charging facilities just now. Would that be included in those, or are they going to still be maintained by ourselves? Although I actually don't know the actual setup as to how they are currently maintained, the ones that we use, I don't know, down in Kellybank and whatnot. Yeah,
so currently it's a kind of mixed economy. We've got some that are regulated through Charge Place Scotland in the public domain, and then some of the ones that we've got in our own buildings are kind of for the council to manage and maintain. But that would be part of the discussion and part of the procurement process. This is to look at the full fleet and see if we can incorporate a fleet of chargers into that as well. But effectively they're for our own private business, effectively for the council. It just so happens we have quite a few of them in our public car parks and in buildings that the council operate and maintain. So we look to try and see where we can, if we can incorporate that, because that would give us, again, more investment. But I think going forward, it will probably still be split, that we would need to look after our own network in terms of the private business operations.
Thank you. Councillor Coyne, to be followed by Councillor McCluckie.
Thanks, Convener. Ian, is this a model that's been invented for this purpose? Is it a model that's been copied from the same model being used down south, or is it modelled on something similar?
Yeah, this is a model that's kind of tried and tested down south. So Manchester's City Council, they've went through this kind of approach. They've got obviously a massive amount of volume of chargers compared to ourselves, and so that's the approach we're taking. And again, there's been a lot of optioneering, looking at different models, and this is the one that the partners, the transport partners, delivery partners through CESTrans feel that is the most effective, that will work for the kind of Scottish economy in terms of our scale.
And has that model down south been running long enough to have any kind of conclusion about how smoothly it runs, and does it achieve its objectives?
I couldn't comment specifically on the success of those models. A lot of this is still quite early days. You know, the situation has changed greatly because we got funding from government to encourage people to charge and have infrastructure there. It was almost a novelty factor. Now it's moving to the point where it's becoming ever more mainstream. Therefore, the council, the government's attitude is, you know, we're not in the business of providing fuel stations, so we're not in the providing, you know, electric fuel stations. So it's really for the private sector to make that investment, and obviously they will take the reward from that over the long term. But that model reinvests it in the network, and they also have the liability of all the maintenance as well. So again, it shifts that risk. So it's relatively early days. This is all really new. Like we say, April 26, Charge Play Scotland will cease to exist. So authorities need to have an alternative arrangement in place.
And the only downside for us is that we are handing over an opportunity to make revenues, an opportunity we don't really want, because we already turned our back on it a couple of years ago, or a year ago, when we changed the charge rates to break even. So presumably we weren't making any money in the first place.
Yeah, that's correct. It really varies across local authorities. I was talking to colleagues in Glasgow last week. They're going to the same model as us, and we think they would be able to make it work and make it profitable, but it's not been profitable for them. Other authorities that maybe have a lot of parking right type sites, that model seems to have worked. But we see a lot more kind of local supermarkets taking over a lot of the burden with this as well. So I think, you know, like I say, this is the kind of best approach that we see for the council, and review all the kind of options that was available to us.
One last wee one, and it's a kind of technical one on page 279. If I can find it. Page 279, considerations, bullet point 3, the Raid Authority model secures a single CPO. I read that 15 times and I got 15, I probably got about 13 different interpretations of it. Can you explain to me in 60-year English what that actually means?
Okay, so out of the 7 authorities that are coming together, we're pulling together our existing charging network and all our future aspirations for the expansion of that network. Therefore, the one lead authority, in this case it's Edinburgh Council, are taking the lead in terms of the procurement and doing all the kind of heavy lifting for doing all the review and the technical elements. And then as a Clackmannanshire Council, our partners within that, and we'll steer that as part of our board. And then once that's appointed, it would be a single operator that would be appointed. It wouldn't be open to a framework. That's been discounted, so it would be one single supplier to gain the maximum benefit for both the councils, but also it's a private investment, so it needs to work for both parties.
Thanks. I did notice I had another page number written down here, so I'll just have a look at it if you don't mind. What was it? 280. Yeah, 4.4. These costs will be shared among the 7 partner authorities. On what basis? Is it pro rata to population, number of cars, miles of road? How is that being done? Oh,
I thought mine stopped working. So a lot of the analysis has been done on already in terms of allocation of the EV fund. So for our area, it's about 6 million for the area here in terms of the partners that we have. So our allocation, depending upon the volume of chargers, the size of the network, and also what our expansion plans are, it would be worked out on a kind of pro rata basis, I would imagine, so that we can secure a kind of representative investment in Clackmannanshire. Also, what we have to consider is some councils are further ahead, and have more chargers and have in terms of population size. So there will need to be a redress of that so that it's equitable, so that Clackmannanshire gets a good deal, and we'll obviously be advocating on that.
Thanks.
Thanks, Dennis. Councillor McCluckie, to be followed by Councillor Holden.
Thanks, Convener. Point 2.1.3 talks about expanding the public EV charging network for the next 12 to 20 years, which is quite a considerable period of time. 12 months ago, the chief executive of BMW said they felt hydrogen engines were going to play a significant role longer term. My question would be, how can we be assured that the longevity and the popularity of electric vehicles is going to continue into that time frame, and that there will be a need and a positive return for this investment?
I'm not in a place that can predict the future economic situation with electric vehicles, but what we can see is there is a demand. Currently, we don't have a great scope within Clackmannanshire, and I do accept your point about hydrogen, alternative fuels. For example, heavy fleet looks like our heavy fleet is looking at hydrogen as more of an option, but the legislation that we have just now seems to be much more in favour of EV charging network. And we also have to deal with on-street parking as well as the public start to buy more EV vehicles. We're seeing the price of those EV vehicles coming down, and the legislation is, like I say, in the funding, the carrot and the stick from government at the moment is taking us down this route. I think the benefit of this is that, again, it takes that risk away. So if there is a new sort of technology that comes along, the council's not completely hamstrung. It's almost separate to the EV charging network, and it's not the council that's making this investment per se. Again, it's going to be done by the private sector. So for us, it's the best of two worlds. We can see what's going on in the fleet and the travel industry, and we can look at that technology and make changes as we see fit.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holden, then Councillor McTaggart.
Why still knowing it?
Stirling are doing their own thing. They're going to maintain it at the moment within their own operations.
You know why?
They're currently making a relatively small profit from it, and my understanding is their decision at this time is that they're going to maintain what they've got at the moment. Like I say, they've got quite a lot of parking range sites, and their network's different to our network. So I can't speak on Stirling's part, but that's my understanding.
You're saying they're making a profit. I understand the network's different. I understand they've got additional things like the parking rate and all the rest of it. But we did point out, didn't we, or I did, at the last meeting that we had about this, that the charging regime that was introduced for Clackmannanshire wasn't competitive. And as a result of that, people went to Stirling because that was more competitive, and yet they'd make money with it. So they were charging less than what we are, but they managed to make it self-funded, self-financed. But we charged a lot more than we couldn't. I'm not trying to get folk to say, we did the wrong decision, but we clearly did make the wrong decision. The charging regime didn't work, did it?
I think we've made the right decision, because at one point the council didn't have any charges in, so we're losing electricity. We're providing free fuel effectively for the public, so we've closed that gap. I think going with this model, there will be a lot more dynamic pricing that will be able to be implemented in a much rapid pace than as a council can. And again, like I say, we're reviewing the register of charges currently at this moment in time, and it's my understanding that we're not proposing any further increases, because there's been fluctuations. Since we spoke last time, Councillor Holden, there has been increases in other authorities as well. We are relatively expensive, but we've got to do that to also show the private sector market that it's worthwhile investing in as well, because if we keep our prices too low, it won't be attractive for that investment to be made.
Only if you want it, of course.
Of course.
So my next question was around, well, I suppose I've got to kind of challenge a wee bit on the criteria which we're measuring success. The criteria seems to be, well, we were giving away free electricity and we were not. And that's a good thing. I kind of understand, I know what you mean. The council's no longer just saying, come and charge the vehicle and you get it for nothing. We've stopped that. What were the numbers like? How have the numbers been over since that time, since we've introduced a new charging regime for it? They went up or down in terms of the number of people that are charging, and perhaps even, I don't know how you would measure it, but the amount of electricity that's been utilised in Clackmannanshire.
It's a wee bit more complicated than that. We've definitely lost revenue because there's been a drop. I've not got an exact number at hand, but you're maybe looking at maybe in between 15–20%. But there's a number of factors for our charges as well because of the state of the charges we've got and the actual maintenance costs as well and the contracts that we have and the electricity costs as well, the ongoing maintenance and again like breakdowns as well. So we've got quite a lot of charges that are near the end of their life. So that all of these factors and basically the lack of investment, but we've not invested as a council fully in our charges. We've tended to use external grants. So there's a number of factors, but there's definitely been, yeah, I can accept that. There's definitely been a drop, but we're seeing that across a lot of authorities. There's been a drop because there's private sectors coming in now and opening up charging stations. You know, supermarkets are investing in it as well. So you know, people are quite savvy and they're going where they can get a better deal.
We've mentioned a lot in the paper, talks a lot about private investment. I mean, at the end of the day, private investment is about somebody else making a profit with it, isn't it? And what I'm concerned about, and that's why I asked you about Stirling. But see, my concern is, and I'm sorry, I always try to kind of make an analogy with something I can understand, because I'm not familiar with how this works, obviously, because I'm in as I here, I don't go apart from the reception yourself, but it's like the football TV. You had one place you went for it and it was Sky, and everybody said, that's not competitive. So what we'll do is, we'll make it more competitive, everybody has to bid for it. And then they bid for it, and you've got 7 months. So before we only had to pay £30 a month to watch, and they've got to pay £100 a month to cover all the channels that can provide it. What I'm concerned about this is, if we allow this to go ahead, what you've got is effectively a monopoly on provision for as far as we would probably want to drive in a day. So whatever they charge, you're not going to have much option really, because I imagine the charging regime would be the same across, well, it might not be the same. Is it going to be the same across the whole area, the South of Scotland area? Is that correct?
So my understanding would be that we as a council, although it's a concession model and the private sector making that investment, we would still have a say in the charging mechanism as well. So there'd be a negotiation to be had with that. It's not a case of right, on you go and they can charge what they like, but there's got to be fair charges. And they would need to be, you know, comparable, so that we're, like we say, we're competitive with other authorities.
My question, sorry, and this is just because I think it's really important, this one, but sorry, your mic. You're saying about fair charges, but so councils would retain the ability to impose all or some of the charge. So that, which would mean that it would not be uniform across the whole. Because I'm surprised at that, because I would have thought with private investment, what they'll say is, we'll take care of South of Scotland. You know, we'll bid for that, we'll get that. We'll bring everybody up to, like the analogy making with the football play. We'll bring them up to £100, whatever, I don't care what it used, but you know what I'm saying, bring them up to that figure. And everybody's captured with that. The only place that potentially could benefit would be Stirling, because they're the only one that's not involved in the partnership, because they could just go lower if they could manage to do that, which they've demonstrated they can do already. So my question is really, I have to be quite clear on that. What is the charging regime going to be? Because this is an important decision if we do it, but effectively, because we can say it's for us. I mean, I get the feeling that the council is, you know, this is just too much hassle. We need to put back office and stuff in because of the change that's going to come about. So it's easier just to let the private sector do it. But when you think about them out there, that could mean them paying more, and we could take alternative decisions and take alternative routes. So I need to know what the charging regime is, how that's going to operate. If you can maybe explain a wee bit about that for us, please.
Yep. So the way the model would work, currently, for example, you look on Charge Play Scotland's website, all the charging charges are there, and they're all variable. They differ from council to council, private company to private company. There won't be that anymore. So what would happen is the concessionaire, they'll take on that investment, so they're getting a subsidy for investing in the network over a period of time. But in order to do that, they need to look at the income that they can make from the chargers. They obviously don't want to do their pricing so that it ends up that nobody's using them, because then they're not getting that income. Currently, that's where we're at. The chargers we've got just now cost the council money. It's not wiping its feet anymore, and it's really expensive. And obviously, there's a volatility with electrical charges as well. So, like I say, that risk is shifted to the concessionaire who takes it on. So that doesn't help the public. Well, the reality is, we currently, I think if someone's taking a long-term investment over all these charges, it's not just Clackmannanshire charges, it's Edinburgh Council's, you know, borders, there will be a higher quality investment made with chargers that won't have fines attached. And if there's a fine, it would be the concessionaire that would have to pay that fine. So the risk sits with the concessionaire as opposed to the council. And the council can still have a say with regards to the pricing, but it would need to be agreed. At this stage, what we're seeking approval for is for the, sorry, hang on, the council's just, we're looking for approval to engage in that process. So some of the details that you're mentioning there, that would come out through the procurement journey and the process.
You've said there, sorry, Mike. You've said there the council will have control over the pricing, but that would have to be agreed. Agreed by who?
It would be agreed by the council and the CPO, the operator.
That's what I thought. My next question is on the subsidy. Now you're saying that it makes it attractive for a private. The only thing that makes it attractive for a private investor is they get the money to do all the work, and then they've got to build in all the costs of maintaining it and all the rest. So I understand the concept. Is you've got £5.9 million for the south of Scotland. How much of that? What proportion of that, if we didn't enter into this partnership, could Clackmannanshire expect to access? Is it done according to local authority area? You talked to me because you mentioned pro rata. Pro rata to what? So it's you've got 5.9 million, how much comes to Clacks and how would we have to go about actually securing that?
So at the moment I couldn't say, right, oh, Clacks will get £1 million investment. It will be dictated on this procurement process and the analysis that gets done with the market and looking at our network as it is now.
Sorry.
And then what we're projected for.
I'm not being clear. As Mark was genuine, what I'm saying here is there's £5.9 million. You're saying the pro rata portion that would come to Clackmannanshire is dependent upon this procurement process, but what I'm saying to you is surely the EVIF grant, we're not obliged to go along with this. So if we don't go along with this, can we access the grant? And so if we can access the grant without being involved in the process, and the process doesn't determine how much I get, there must be an external formula for the calculation of how much Clackmannanshire would get.
Yeah, so at the moment, the way it's been set out is we roughly think between Stirling and Falkirk, Falkirk and Clacks, there was around £3 million investment between Falkirk and Clacks. But of that split, we can't define that at this time because there's quite a lot of work to get done. As you can imagine, looking at the existing network, there's a whole review of the actual quality of the network condition, the actual EV infrastructure. It's not just the chargers you see, it's also the work that needs to get done underground as well to support it in terms of substations. So there's quite a lot of work. I'm sorry I can't give you all the detailed answers that you would give you assurance, but everything that we've got in front of us at the moment tells us that this is the best approach for Clackmannanshire.
I'm not going to challenge you, and I'm just going to clarify. This is really important, and I've got a couple of questions because it's leading up to a conclusion, and I'm asking for a specific reason. So, are you saying there's almost £3 million available for Falkirk and Clackmannanshire?
Yes.
Right. And Clackmannanshire can choose, if it wishes, not to enter into the partnership, which means it would stop being entitled to whatever proportion that you. I accept you. We can't have every answer here. You've not got the figure there in terms of what the calculation. But let's just, for argument's sake, because we've got a traditional formula in there, let's just say it's what 70-30, which would be pretty much proportionate to the population. 30% of how much is that? Sorry, did you say?
It was 3.8 million, I think, on it.
900,000 plus.
Yeah.
So that'd be 900,000 plus. So my question is this then, so if we enter into this partnership, we get the benefit of not having to bother all the hassle. We get £900,000 of funds that we could access, goes to a private company, which will then and deal with the responsibilities and manage that in the future. We'll only have total control, but we'll have some control over the setting of charges. Right? We got £729,000 in 2014, sorry, for that money, for it was delivered to 36 chargers, which equates to £20,000 per charger. Right? Homeowners, the average charge at the moment is 1,000. So, quick calculation, the maths, 700 we could have had it, rather than 34 if we'd chosen to go in a different route. We could have done that. And I had proposed it to do that and we got it rejected. And then we proposed the charges and then that's found out to be not working either. I'm not saying I'm right all the time, but sometimes I am. So what I'm asking, the reason I'm asking this question is, if we've got roughly £900,000 of grant available to us, we want to go down a different route because we just want to go down a different route because that's what we want to do. If we want to fund individual households, right, to access a grant, to install these chargers in their properties, we could probably do it for around about £1,000 per unit. I'm going to ask you the question. I know you'll come, I'm just what I wanted to, I can only go on what I read. Let's just say we did, let's just say we could do for £1,000 per unit, and we're talking 900 in them, right? The risk after they're installed, would it not be lying with, we could have it in such a way that it was lying with the householder. So you access the grant, install your charger, the risk lies with you, the maintenance lies with you. We get what we want. We didn't have to have a back office and things in place. It's a grant, it's issue to do. Is it possible for us to go down that route? At which point will you just say no, and that's going to kill my whole argument. But the point is, I'd love to know that, because I think it's a much more innovative and interesting approach. I'm not really wanting to make money for private companies. So that's why I'm asking that.
There's an awful lot of thinking out loud until we get to the questions.
No, that's.
No, happy to answer that. No, the answer is no, because number one, the funding's been provided by the government for the public charging infrastructure. It's not dealing with private home charging infrastructure. It's dealing with the public charging network, which currently at the moment is administered by local authorities through Charge Place Scotland. So that we wouldn't have that option to dictate where the funding goes. The funding and the parameters for the funding at the moment from Transport Scotland is very much geared around looking at this kind of model. And that's because all the analysis has been done is that that's the way we follow. We can't interfere with the homeowners or provide grant funding. It's not, this grant's not a council grant, as it were. It's funding from the Transport Scotland, and it's designed purely for the public charging infrastructure, not private homes.
Okay. I get what you're saying. There's some distinction that I'm not quite picking up between public network charging and public having it in their house. I don't get that, but that's fine. You've answered my question about that. So, in terms of the final question, is really just about the future. You talked about future aspirations. That's why I was going down this, because I'm interested. Because you clearly say, well, we've got aspirations for Clackmannanshire. What exactly are those aspirations for Clackmannanshire in terms of units and charging and prices? Because the questions I've asked you about the private investment and all the rest of it, the pro rata charge for us and all that, all the pro funds for us are all predicated on what's going to happen, what's good for us, but what about the public out there? How many charges are we going to see in place? Can you give a figure to those? Do you have any indication of what the charges are going to be and how they're going to compare to some other local authorities or any of that information?
At the moment, unfortunately, I can't give any quotas or direct numbers about what we might see. There's a lot of this is predicated on, like we say, when we go to the market and there's a tender process and we see what tenders come back. But this is really around getting that process going and then seeing what the market can provide. There'll be future opportunity to come back and update council on that process and give a lot more detail around those numbers. But in my perspective, then the early work that we've seen is that we would be looking to try and increase substantially the variety and the quality of the chargers. So you've got more rapid chargers that are more popular, rather than the slow chargers we've got. So it could be that the decisions are made to phase out a lot of the slow chargers and relocate them. And we also want to try and see councils all over trying to see more investment in the high street and the town centres to encourage footfall for business. So maybe a lot of the council car parks, you might see more charging bays in those council car parks. Again, to encourage the kind of economic investment and the kind of the boost that we give to the town. So that's what we're hoping to see.
Thanks for being a bit patient. I'm asking quite a lot of questions. I'm sorry I'm thinking about it because I'm just getting answers and you're kind of formulating the questions just on the basis of answers. But my final one is, I want to make sure of this. You're absolutely 100% saying to us that the grants that are coming, the EVA grants that are available, right, that we can access for Scottish Government are all linked to public provision. I mean, public as in doesn't even fit in any one household. You're saying absolutely 100% that's the case.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McTaggart, to be followed by Councillor Balsillie.
Thanks, Convener. I suppose along similar lines to Councillor Hogan was asking, will we have any control regarding the charge that is imposed in Clackmannanshire? You said that we'd have consultation and discussions at the outset, but should the private provider come back at some point in the line and say, no, that's no earning us enough profit, I want to put that up, would we retain any control regarding the future price and structure? And my second question is, would this cost this council any money at all? Would everything be covered by grant funding, or would this council be expected to invest anything at all? Thanks, Ian.
Thanks for this question, Councillor. The second part there, the answer would be no, that this is, at the moment, this is all external funding. The only cost would be obviously officers' time, you know, to the ongoing management of it. I think what we need to think around is we don't control petrol prices at the fuel stations. So the way the model's moving is that the market would dictate the charging. What we would retain as a council would be the siting of the chargers, so that we make sure that there's still charging network in areas of deprivation or areas where it's maybe not as accessible at the moment, so that it's fitting in the Scottish Government's just transition to net zero. So that's where we would have that leverage. But again, when we go through this procurement process, a lot of the questions you're asking will be thrashed out when we go down that process. All authorities will want the assurance that they can have some element of control, but we don't control petrol pump prices, and we won't be able to control electric vehicle charging prices. The market will dictate that, energy prices will dictate that. What this will do is lever in private investment to expand the network, and also shift the maintenance of these fuel stations, and that's what we need to think of them as, fuel stations for energy, to the private sector. So it would take away cost. So the private sector, they take all the risk for the cost, and they take all the income as well, and that's the balancing act we need. And we have no guarantee that when we go to the market that will be an acceptable proposition. It could be that the market comes back and we don't have a successful bidder. So we'll update council at that point.
Thanks, Ian. That's cleared it up for me.
Okay, Councillor Balsillie, to be followed by Councillor Forson.
First of all, a statement on the question. So I think this paper would have probably benefited from a councillor briefing to iron out some of these sort of issues. I get the principle of South of Scotland partnership. You've got consistent maintenance and income distribution. But I'd like to come back to the key principle about what sort of discussions have been had on pro rata contributions and distribution of income, because as a council, when we enter into these partnerships with large authorities like Edinburgh City and Fife and Dumfries and Galloway, we always have an issue with our size. So can you give us some sort of idea of a pro rata contribution, if there's been any discussion along those lines?
At the moment, it's not really been looked at in terms of the contribution. What it's been looked at is the existing state of the networks. So each authority's got different chargers at different states of disrepair or different maintenance regimes. So it's quite a complicated process. So that's an ongoing process at the moment as it stands. What's been set up is the partnership, the group, the collaborators, and the procurement journey. And that's where we're at this time. What the procurement process will allow is the authorities to come together and work out those details around the pro rata, but it will be dictated by a lot of different factors. I think our size in terms of being small could be a benefit, because we could then lever in more, because some of the councils they're already ahead of us. So we're hoping to try and get a more investment in Clackmannanshire, but that'll be detailed through the procurement journey.
And can I just check, Ian, did you say earlier that it wouldn't cost the council any money, that we'd be primarily using our grant resource from the Scottish Government? And what sort of guarantees have we got that would happen if we're delegating it back to the Strategic Debt Director without any referral back to us as a council?
So obviously the delegated element, it kind of aligns with how things are delegated currently. But I think we can give assurances that there's no investment required from Clackmannanshire. This is a concession model, and that investment is made through the grant. There's no investment from the council in terms of its own capital or revenue funds at this time.
That's fine. Thanks, Convener.
Thank you. Councillor Forson, to be followed by Councillor Quinn.
Thanks. Now, I do appreciate this paper is primarily about the use of the public chargers. However, we've got lots of people in Clackmannanshire who are forced to use the public chargers because they can't install chargers at their own homes because we don't have an approved kind of cross-pavement solution at the moment. So I am actually just wondering whether we have an update on where we are with coming to an arrangement about a cross-pavement solution, because public chargers are one thing, but at-home chargers are something that I think our population, it's certainly what I'm contacted most about. It's not about the public chargers, it's about when are we going to get a solution for at-home chargers. I know there's a group being set up, the Scots group, and I know the council's represented on it, so I'm just really wondering what the discussions are around that, because I do know that both the Scottish and the UK governments have grants worth about £500 combined that householders can apply for these installations, but we didn't have an agreed solution, so I'm just wondering whether you could update as part of this. Thanks.
Yep, that's a great point. So what council leader referred to is on-street parking. So it could be that some of this investment looks at solutions for on-street parking in some areas that would help the public that don't have access. For example, people in flatted properties that don't have their own drive. The council at the moment and officers through Scots and Transport Scotland, we really need to have a standard specification detailed for on-street parking before we start to authorise the use of the public highway and cutting into the public highway, bringing in electrical installation and apparatus. And the council, it doesn't have to provide parking for private householders, and likewise we don't currently have to provide electric charging facilities. We are aware and we're looking at a lot of different innovations with technology. There's different things. There's a company called Kerbo Charge that do things, and we spoke to them. But at the moment, the legislation we have as a roads authority doesn't allow us to enact that at the moment, and we're really keen to get a solution from Transport Scotland on that.
Can I come back on that? Because certainly the correspondence I've had with the Scottish Government say that it's entirely up to the local authority to decide, and I do know that Stirling are running a pilot and other local authorities are running pilots on this, so it'd be good to kind of clarify that. But I guess my point is that there's public chargers that people are using at the moment and they have to pay as you go. But if a householder installs one of these cross-pavement ones, it's their own electricity that they use. And most people would prefer to do that than go and use, a kind of charging station. What's up for discussion today isn't that, because there's the funding under that wouldn't cover the cross-pavement stuff. But there is funding available, but because we've come to an arrangement as a local authority on how we can implement that, and other local authorities are pushing ahead and doing it. I do know that we were going to maybe take some learning from the Stirling pilot on this, so just wondering, have we learned anything from it? And really, we need to start moving towards a solution, because the government are saying to me, you've got the power to do it yourself when you go.
Yeah, I know that is an issue, but just practicalities of it. That, for example, if you take one of the kind of streets into Lickotry, the cottages there, if you turn up and we don't have dedicated parking, so if you turn up to your house and you can't get your car outside, what's your answer then? You've got the providers of these charging units. They're obviously keen to sell them. And they're offering it as an opportunity, but actually it's fraught with peril, because you could end up having the public footway with cables everywhere, and if you're 3-4 cars down, you can't actually park your car and get access to your property anyway. So for me, it's not just a simple matter of having the plan to have on-street parking. It's the practicalities around it and the legislation at the moment that could create more problems. And so our approach is to, like you say, review how other authorities are getting on and take the lessons from that. At the moment, the priorities are obviously EV charging, and then we're also looking at the wider parking issues in Clackmannanshire as well.
Okay, Councillor Quinn, to be followed by Councillor Coyne.
Councillor Cook.
He was on.
Just
He disappeared.
I'm going to the top. Yeah.
Is he able to chat and see drop it later? The whole privacy thing.
Councillor Coyne, do you want to do your question just now?
Thank you very much. I will do that. Ian, you referred earlier to, this is talking about, subject heading is profiteering here by the contractor. You talked earlier about the fuel supply in the area. We don't control the price at the pump. But that's because there's competition within the whole SOS area. It's not just Shell that delivers petrol. It's Shell and TP and Axe and all these different people. So there's competition on village by village basis. So it's not really a fair argument. There's an opportunity here that, apart from the folk who live in the fringes of the SOS area, it's an opportunity to profiteer at a cost to the people in the middle, because private ventures, private enterprises are always under pressure to make money and keep their shareholders happy, etc. So there's always going to be an upward vector in terms of their willingness to move prices. What would possibly address that, and I'm hoping you would agree with the suggestion, so the question will you agree, is that you enter into this on an open book accounting basis with the contractor, and you review beforehand what is the reasonable margin to take, and that's pre-agreed, and it's probably a variable rate over a period based upon the energy prices, because they have to be protected from a massive hike in electricity costs. But at least if you've got an open book basis that they get their margin at an agreed percentage on that, over that and their operational costs, then at least the public are being charged a fair amount. And the profit is there to enable the process to take place and the public get a service. But it stops it being a runaway train for the companies, and I think that would be quite an important way to do it on an open book basis, so they show you their numbers. And you've previously agreed what the cap is in terms of percentage, whatever. Do you think that would work?
Yeah, I think what you've described is a very accurate assessment of what the proposal is, which is the kind of fair pricing policy, and what you're proposing is in line with what our partners at Sestrans and obviously Edinburgh that's taking the lead on the procurement are looking to set up, to have that open book, as you suggest. That's the way forward. Like I say, the council will still have a kind of power over about the placement of the charters, and will have a say in the contract, as it were, in terms of the fair pricing regime, so that there isn't any kind of runaways and the people in more rural areas are disadvantaged or priced out.
Sorry, Councillor Quinn's had a bit of an issue in terms of getting in online. It's that privacy notice issue. I think that he's not able to unmute himself, but he has a question, if that's okay, that I can put it forward. Yeah. So this is a question from Councillor Quinn, and it was, he was going to ask about the discounts that we offer to some households just now. Would we lose the ability to do that?
I'm sorry, I don't fully understand the question in terms of discounts for the public charging network.
Yes. Do we offer any discounts currently at the moment, I suppose?
There's discretionary discounts, yes.
So will that impact in terms of what going forward and what is being proposed?
All the pricing it would be part of the procurement process in terms of considerations, and these would be brought back to council for update before we would go to award.
It's fine, thank you.
Okay, if there are no further questions, Councillor Law to move the paper.
Just obviously, I'm very conscious of we are one of the we are the smallest mainland authority, so we've got to think of economies of scale if we went by ourselves. And would we have the capacity in the team and the expertise in the team? Would we have to get people in if we were to go this alone in order to deal with this? And that, I'm taking it, wouldn't come off any grant funding. We would have to find a budget for that. And even if, I take it, we had to increase charges, that would still take a long time in order to kind of get that budget going. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's significant cost to the administration of this, as well as the ongoing maintenance burden of these machines that the council will still need to maintain, and we don't have any guarantee of any future funding for expansion of the network, and we would be faced with having to do capital bids for new equipment, and we don't have, as I see at the moment, the resource within the team to administer that and carry on and go forward. That's correct.
Okay, thanks, Ian. If there are no further questions. Councillor Lottie, move the paper.
Right, as part of being a member at Sestran, this has been brought up there quite a lot, and I know that other authorities, like ourselves, as what Ian had said in regards to the capacity within the council to do these, the expertise and obviously our economies of scale, I don't see that we have any other way to move forward with this. And I'm very glad that we have been able to actually go in with the other authorities, as I say, just that kind of wider network that will which will allow us to have that kind of greater kind of debate, or when you're negotiations, sorry, that's the word I'm looking for, negotiations when we are looking at the contracts. I think it is the only way forward for us to go in order for this to be a positive and kind of beneficial way for us to carry on with EV chargers within Clackmannanshire, because my fear is that if we didn't do this, then we would get to the point where our chargers would be switched off. And I think that would have a greater negative consequence than not doing this.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison to second.
Thanks, Convener. If we're serious about changing the mode of transportation away from petrol and diesel vehicles, one thing we need to make sure is that EV charging points are available, maintained, ready to use, and as the majority of this discussion today actually was about affordability, so they need to be affordable as well. And I'm hopeful that during the negotiations, as Ian has pointed out, that we make sure that happens. This operating model makes all of that more likely in Clackmannanshire, with access to greater funding and resources than we could as a single local authority. So yeah, I think that this will help us along the road. No pun intended, I didn't notice I've done that. Until now to decarbonisation, so yeah, happy to second it.
Okay, thank you. The paper's now open to debate. Yeah. Councillor Forson, followed by Councillor Holden, followed by Councillor Clyde.
Thanks, Convener. I will support the paper, but I think for the reasons that have been said around about the economies of scale, as we find very often in Clackmannanshire, we get some grant funding and it just doesn't go far enough to deliver what we need it to do. So by going into a partnership with a wider local authority area, I think we'll be able to deliver more with less. I do think this is only a small part of the kind of solution to EV charging, and we've spent an awful lot of time kind of debating this one area of it. But these are public chargers that anybody in the public can pay to use, and we've got 36 of them in Clackmannanshire thus far. Hopefully we'll get some more out of this programme, but we really need to be tackling the at-home charging that's available to people, and that means finding the solutions for the problems. I would say a lot of our properties would need cross pavement parking, so I think we do need to move a wee bit on that, and I'll be speaking to the new spokesperson to see what we can maybe kind of work out on that. There are pilots available. I don't know what the solution is, but I think there are pilots available that will help with this solution, and that will mean the reliance on public charging will be a lot less. Although if you're travelling from one place to another, you need to be able to access charging. So yeah, I'm happy to support the paper as it stands, but I think we've got a long way to go on this issue.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Holden, followed by Councillor Clyde.
Give notice of an amendment.
Sorry?
Give notice of an amendment.
Yep.
Get the amendment first before I can speak to the paper. Is that okay? Yeah.
So, Councillor Holden, we need to know what the amendment was. You know the requirement under standing orders for you to submit an amendment ahead of the meeting taking place. It's been a matter that's come up. Mr. Hodgins. Sorry?
Yeah, possible. It's not impossible because it's there is the question bad.
Yeah, so if it's from this debate it's brought up something that's of an urgent nature that you think requires an amendment, you provide us with an amendment and we'll give a judgment around.
The amendment is to defer the pay.
Sorry?
The amendment is to defer the pay.
on the basis.
Well, I can speak to that. I'm just telling you, the amendment would be to defer the paper. That's what the amendment would be. I just sort of mentioned that. I can't, you didn't follow that with, didn't plot that down. I'm just to say deferral. I'm advised that I can't vote for the deferral. I have to actually amend it. That's what I was going to do. That's okay.
Mr. Holden, your amendment, so your amendment would be to defer the paper with a view to doing what? You need to explain the purpose of the deferment and doing what with it after that.
Well, right, okay. I'm trying to work with what I'm saying is that the recommendation would be delete 2.1 and replace this council agrees to defer. Following, and defer that for subject to future paper. I can explain and when I'm talking to the amendment why I would want us to approve the amendment. The amendment in terms of study would simply be to defer. I'll explain. You know, we don't judge the merits of a deferral, or we don't judge the merits of an amendment based on an argument that hasn't been put yet. It's simply whether it's competent.
Yeah. So the bit's missing. What you've put forward is to defer the paper. What I need you to do is to complete that in terms of the action. Defer the paper with a view to bringing it back when, with what?
Right, okay, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to actually help you take both some things that were said to Councillor Foss and someone else as well. What I'm trying to achieve is that we don't approve the paper today. So we defer the paper on the basis that the paper will be brought back to the next council meeting for consideration. Is that okay? Right, sorry. That would be my amendment.
Okay, in light of the extensive numbers of questions that were asked in relation to that paper, I'm going to accept your amendment, let you put the amendment to the Chamber and we'll vote on it.
Remember, Council agrees to defer the paper until the next council meeting. Is that right?
Do we have a second for the amendment?
Never want to stifle debate. I will second it so it can be debated.
Okay. Anybody wish to debate the paper? Sorry, the amendment.
Sorry, sorry.
It's not so much a debate as in, and I know that we don't, the question, the standing orders maybe don't allow this, but what would be the purpose of bringing a paper back? I'm not quite sure. Are you getting the opportunity to kind of, yeah.
Well, because I put the amendment up, I've now to explain why the paper should be deferred, and then we would judge it on the basis of that.
Aye.
Okay, so we've got the second there. Councillor Holden.
Can I just say, can I
take us through?
Right, okay. Well, I'm not wanting to labour this point, just trying to get to this. Can I ask I know people are raising their eyes and all the rest of it, but point of order, I didn't require a seconder to speak to an amendment. Let's be clear about that. And because I've noticed in chambers we're asking, you've got a seconder, no, well, you can. Well, you can. I can speak to it and then only we can debate it if I get a seconder. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry, so it's just a point. It's important. Right, so I've just listened to the reason I've got a very short simple. I've heard some questions. My issue with this is that it's and it's right. I've checked and Ian's absolutely correct. It can only be used for lever and private investment. So I can't change that. That's what it is. But there are a number of questions here that have been raised today about affordability. And the simple fact is that there's an awful lot of delegation here in terms of right up to including the concession contract, to include negotiations to enter in the result in IAA. It's not about trust. It's about transparency and accountability. If we're going to engage in something like this, there will be clear costs to the public. We should be clear before we sign off on it what those are going to be. I would much rather have a process where we can have a period of time between now and the next council meeting, unless there's a really good reason why we shouldn't, have a wee bit extra time, so we can talk to officers, get some guidance on that. And I think ultimately, council should approve it, because that's the only way in which we can say, look, it's not just about what's good for us in terms of not having to put in back office arrangements, etc. It's also about having a degree of scrutiny over these things to ensure that whatever charging regime is going to be brought in to Clackmannanshire for the installation of these things, that we are aware of what it's going to be and that we're prepared to approve it on that basis, understanding that there will be a knock-on effect in terms of public affordability. So that's really my reason. And also, the point was raised by the council leader. I'm always this one for having all of these issues about having home charging. And that would be a really sensible way forward for people for a good, rather than having all these public ones, because you only have it in the house if you actually got a car that you can charge with, and then you could save a lot with that. So there's issues like that, I think, also which are concerning me, that if I wasn't aware that we've really got difficulties in terms of I think it's cross-street cabling, I wasn't aware of that. And so there's questions in these things that I would like to get answered as well. And I know that issue is not directly related to this fund, but I still think that that's relevant in terms of our subsequent approval of how we want to proceed with this. I just think that a further degree of scrutiny for that, and understanding that when we agree 2.15 especially and 2.16, that the level of delegation here is considerable. And I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. I think as elected members that we should have that degree of scrutiny so that we can say to members of the public, look, we know what this means for you. Otherwise, what we've approved today is participation in a scheme with no clear outcome of what the charge regime is going to be, how that's going to be put in place over a period of time, and ultimately say, well, we've delegated that to officers. It's not about trust, it's about transparency.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Holden. Councillor Coyne, are you happy to second that amendment?
Yes, sir.
The amendment's now open for debate. Anybody wish to debate? Councillor Law.
Having obviously came up in Sestran, and as we've heard, that the timescales that Charge Place Scotland and that they have extended it. I don't believe it's getting extended any further, but I know that the timescales for this to kind of go into that word that I forgot earlier. What's it? The negotiation. Thank you. Just keeps going out of my head. That the timescales for this negotiation to get this set up in time for Charge Place Scotland going it is very critical. And my worry would be that if we deferred that, then we might not be able to go into this collaboration, another word that I can't say, with the other local authorities. Because I know that, I think on Sestran, when they have their kind of green, amber, red in regards to the risk and whatnot, I'm pretty sure this is up red risk because of the time that it will take to go through these negotiations. So my worry would be if we deferred this, that we would then not be able to go into this collaboration, and we would be in that situation that we wouldn't have, we then, if we went alone, we would not have time to get something in place for that Charge Place Scotland going cutting off. But I don't know if officers are able to come in at this point and confirm whether that's the case or not.
Okay, I mean, maybe others want to join the debate, but it might be the right time to probably ask that question. I mean, I don't know if you're able to come up and answer that.
Councillor Law's assessment is correct. We would probably be having to look to switch off the public charging network, because we don't have the alternative arrangements in place that would be able to offer anywhere near the level of what's been proposed today. So it would be highly difficult, and the timeline at the moment is really tight for the procurement process. We are aware there's an element of delegation here, but that's because we need to kind of work at pace. to be part of that wider collaboration with other authorities that are also, progressing with this.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Coyne.
This is tricky because, it's a new idea and questions come to your mind, but we're in debate and I'm not quite sure how to address that. Because, obviously we don't currently have a plan B for the 36 or 37 chargers in the area. We need to do something, we need to get moving on a new project, that's one pressure. But, there are a lot of questions about the thing that have been asked around the room, so I can see the merit in a delay. But at the same time, we might be slightly in a sort of well-being hub situation here where you can be over, the delay can cause more problems than it solves. So I'm a wee bit uncertain about this. One question I would have liked to have asked in this particular connection is to do with at what point the Rubicon is crossed and we've signed on the dotted line and who signed it. If it's council that's signing it, I don't have a problem. But if it's one single person, and this is no reflection on Kevin whatsoever, but if it's down to one person, I don't think that's adequate. I think if we pass the paper unamended and we don't get to a point where we are committed without having a chance to grab the kiddie in the back and pull him in, I would be for holding back on the paper. But if we've still got room to modify this contract in the future, then I would go against my own secondary, if you like. That's kind of how I feel about it. It's all about handing the problem over, hoping it works.
Is there an opportunity for us to tweak the amendment to... Sorry.
Take it back to council for final approval. Be a better amendment.
Yeah, that's a good call. We'll adjourn for 10 minutes and come back to just pick it up and get the left off the council.
That would have been a better amendment.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, colleagues. Call the meeting back to order. Councillor McCluckie has put his apologies, had to leave. Councillor Holden, do you want to read out your amendment again to the chamber and pick it up from there?
Thanks, Convener. It was replace recommendation 2.16 with council will be required to approve the outcome of the procurement process, and then also delete sections 2.17 to sections 2.19, which would form the basis of the report which comes back for the final council approval at the next time. I think that addressed all the concerns, and I'm sorry for the confusion in the time today. Apologies for that.
We're leaving in 211 to 215.
Yes.
And then replacing 216. That's okay. Anybody wish to debate that any further? No. Okay, put the amendment to the vote. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. It's carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. On you go.
Is that not him going, I agree?
Well, that be it, yeah.
It has to be questions. Okay, so the amendment's been carried. Item 12 on the agenda, early learning and childcare review. And
Have to vote in favour. All we've done is amended. Right, last.
okay, having passed the amendment, I'll be happy to support the paper, including the amendment put forward by Councillor Holden.
Yes.
Anybody else happy to? Carried as amended, thanks. Early learning and childcare review, Adrian's going to take us through that paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Good afternoon, councillors. In October 2023, Council approved 4 change areas to provide efficiencies across the early learning and childcare service model delivery. The purpose of the paper today is to provide Council with an update on progress made across these 4 areas. Change Area 1 was concerned with a centralised admissions process. This has been implemented over 2 phases, with the first phase implemented in February of 2024. The second phase was the development of a digitalised system, and the system is due to go live on the 1st of February. Change Area 2 was concerned with the continued suspension of admissions to Bankery ELC. This was approved by Council for 24-25 with no admissions during that academic session. Due to falling roles across Tullibody schools, there is now sufficient space within Bankery Primary School to offer both flexible nurture spaces and to reopen an ELC provision. The space now available allows for the provision of 16 spaces for 3 to 5-year-olds from August 2025. This can be delivered within existing budgets. Change Area 3 involved a 48-week per year operating model for our 4 standalone ELCs. This was implemented in August 2024, and provision of a 48-week per year operating model in our extended year settings brings us in line with other local authorities. The model continues to provide families with choice and 1140 hours that they're entitled to for quality early learning and childcare. Change Area 4 was concerned with contractual hours moving from 35 hours per week to 32.5 hours per week for all new posts. This has been fully implemented with the early years educator vacancies and new posts advertised at 32.5 hours. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions on the paper? Councillor Holt?
Just on the last point, it was just around the... I'm sorry.
Just on the last point, early years educator vacancies, new posts are advertised at 2.5. To date, 7 new staff have been employed, so it's a reduction from what it was previously. And you've just said results in a more efficient service. How is that more efficient?
So previously we were employing 35-hour contracts. Children attend for 30 hours in a week. So in reducing from 35 to 32.5, we still allow for the time with children and an additional 2.5 hours for staff development and preparation time. So it's saving us in staff costs.
2.5 hours
per person for the new contracts.
Okay, any other? Councillor Moore?
Can I just check 3.3? It says that admissions will be open for 3 to 4-year-olds. I think that should be 5 for the kids that have deferred.
Sorry, at this end, but could you say that again?
It says 3 and 4-year-olds. I take it should be 3 to 5-year-olds.
Yes, that's correct.
3.33, because it's kids that have chosen to defer, so it'll take in 5-year-olds who still go to nursery.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No? Okay. Councillor Lindsay, move.
Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Adrian, for the overview. The paper provides an update on the change areas as set out in the ELC review agreed at the council meeting in October 2023. We've obviously got the 4 change areas. Adrian's outlined the 4 change areas and the update around each of those. Centralised admissions, obviously that model's now been fully implemented and we've got a fully digitalised offer, which links to a previous paper earlier in terms of the progression now that we have for parents to be able to do that online. The 48-week, just clarified there in terms of the contractual hours, we've just clarified there in terms of the reduction in hours for all new posts and the 48-hour week in terms of that operating model where the saving has now been achieved. In terms of the Bank of the ELC, it's probably the biggest change within the paper. And we obviously agreed previously in terms of the suspension of enrolments at Bank of the ELC and gave a commitment to keep this under review, and that commitment's held true. The commitment has obviously enabled the provision of the nurturing space to meet a wide range of children's needs. However, due to a reduction in role at Bankery School and across Tilbury and indeed across all of our primary schools, we have identified additional space within the school that will allow the education service to reinstate space for an ELC provision. So this offers us an opportunity to reopen admissions from February 2025 in a couple of days' time for the session 25-26 and beyond. Now, this is obviously really good news. We're able to do this within existing budgets, as Adrian's outlined. And we've communicated with the parent council and community on this, who are obviously pleased that this will take place. It's obviously a smaller provision initially, but as I say, we're pleased to be able to put this offer in place within our existing budgets. And just to say, a huge amount of work and a bit of thinking that's gone on to make this situation arrive. So just extend my thanks to Adrian and the team for making this happen. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hamilton, second.
Thanks, I'll formally second.
Okay, thank you. Paper's open for debate. Anyone who's debate it? Councillor Rennie?
Yeah, just to say, some of you might remember that I was really concerned about the suspension of referrals to nursery way back when it happened. So I'm so pleased to see this. I was waiting all day to get to this point in the agenda in terms of this paper, because I just wanted to get on the record and express how happy I am that this is moving forward, and also how grateful I am to the Education Department to get us to this point. So I just wanted to say that on the record.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to debate the paper? Opportunity to sum up, Councillor Lindsay? No. So the recommendation is that the Council note the updated progress against the change area set out in October 2023 paper. I'm happy to note. Thank you. Item 13 is a motion to Clackmannanshire Council by Councillor Forson.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think the motion is self-explanatory. At the beginning of January, I received correspondence from Daphne Hamilton asking, and the Chief Executive received the same correspondence, asking me to endorse what was outlaid in her correspondence. I obviously don't have the delegated authority to do that on behalf of the Council, so I thought the best way to deal with that was to bring it forward to Council for a decision. Though I'm proposing the motion, I just want to address a couple of things. There's some statements in Daphne's email that are not correct. There's a statement that says, given both myself and the Chief Executive's roles in approving the levies in the draft Alloa First Business Plan, neither myself nor the Chief Executive approved the levies. The levy rate is set by the board of the bids in relation to their business plan. There were a number of other kind of assertions in there in relation to kind of the impact of bid levies and the amount of bid levies, and you'll see the information provided by Daphne in relation to that. It's really difficult to comment on that because it's almost comparing oranges and apples, because every single bid is different. It's got different levies set for a number of different reasons in relation to the number of business days, in relation to the activities that are laid out in the business plan. So I think it's very difficult to ascertain whether there is a disproportionate financial impact on businesses. I've very much taken the view all along that this is a decision for businesses to take, and bids are made up of businesses. It's only the board of the bid who can put forward an alteration to the business plan, and that's the levy, etc. And it's only that would trigger an alteration ballot. So the council has got no ability to affect an alteration ballot, because we're not on the board, although there is a board member, but they're there in a different capacity now. So it's quite a difficult thing. There was also information within the correspondence saying that over 70 businesses had signed up. I did ask Daphne if she was able to provide details of the 70 businesses, and she wasn't able to do so. She explained that there was many businesses who didn't want to be kind of public in relation to their support for an alteration levy. Again, it's very difficult, to kind of reach a conclusion on that basis. It's overall a difficult position. So the information is here in front of us today, and we are asking Council, I suppose, to reach a decision. And two asks, which were one, to recognise that the levels charged by Alloa First have imposed a significantly disproportionate financial burden on the businesses, and support the call for an alteration ballot to remedy this situation. For me, it's pretty clear only the board can affect an alteration ballot, and should businesses wish to affect an alteration ballot, then they should stand for election to the board at the AGM, and then they can, kind of put forward the alteration ballot or the request for an alteration ballot. So I'm opening that up to debate, and we will no doubt reach a position on that in due course.
Okay, thanks. So for that to happen, I need to seconder to allow a debate on this, Councillor.
Happily second.
Okay, thank you.
Bear in mind that I am the director of the board, so maybe I'm still the account. That doesn't tell you yet. I can second it. Can I say it? Very good.
I'll add some comment to that as well. It is true, the only people who can trigger an alteration ballot is the board of Alloa First. It's not a council issue, it's not a council thing. And the only reason that an alteration ballot would be called is to change the area, change the amount of the levy, or change who paid. So the second one there is the one that she's chasing after. However, we've spoken at the board about this matter. I don't think this is confidential, and we've certainly invited Daphne to write back with a co-signed letter saying this is what we want. But that alone would not be enough to generate it, because there's no drag-along figure in the legislation that says if 25% say we want a ballot, then that's an automatic recall. There isn't anything like that. It's entirely at the discretion of the board, 100%. And they are not minded to move on this. So it's a no-show, basically, a non-show.
Councillor Holman.
I think it's interesting that this is a most unusual motion to council, because it tells me absolutely nothing about the thoughts of the person that's submitting the motion. And I know there's no criticism in that. It's completely mutable. And I'm first reading all that, I'm saying, well, what is it asking? You know, and then you get to the point here, recognise the level. If that was a motion to council, it would be incompetent, because it contains argument. And it's predicated on the basis that there has been a significantly disproportionate financial burden imposed on local businesses. So that's argument, and by accepting this and writing on that basis, you're going to where I'm going to go with this, because I couldn't support that myself, because I think that would be, you know, it would be presumptuous of us to do that, and rude, quite frankly, to write to the bid and say that. The alternative is, of course, that you write to them and neutralise that by saying, we would request, because that's all we've got the power to do, would request to reconsider the bid levy on the basis that it may be having a disproportionate impact on some businesses. That would be the polite and the neutral way of saying that. That would require an amendment. So, and again, yeah, I know, and at the risk of something bad happening to me in the future, because I've had this correspondence and I absolutely understand it and sympathise with it. As someone who has opposed the bid consistently, I have always been against the bid. I just think it's an additional form of taxation on local businesses. They don't need it. And I'm not convinced that it's a democratic process, because the council and other larger partners wield a disproportionate amount of votes. That's what concerns me. But anyway, regardless of that, it would have to be an amendment. However, Councillor Coyne, as the member on the board, is saying that they're not going to entertain it. Is it worthwhile putting up an amendment? From my perspective, I'm considering, is it worthwhile me amending it just to show the person that there's a degree of sympathy and the full expectation that it's going to be rejected? I think perhaps yes, because there is quite a compelling case being put forward by a quite sizable number. It doesn't matter at this point. I have no say in it, and have no real opinion on whether it's right or it's wrong, but having read it, I'm sympathetic to what they're saying, and to have that request considered. But it would have to be put forward on a basis, I think, I couldn't support that, because it's not neutral enough for me. It makes too many assumptions. And I would, if I remember, I'll stop talking and just say, if that was the case, I don't know what members are happy. And if somebody else wants to put the amendment up to that effect, that would be most welcome. But it would just be something along the lines of, you know, that no, we would agree to write to the bid on the basis that they reconsider the levy, but that's it. And just leave it at that and neutralise the whole thing. I've got nothing else to say on it other than when it comes to that.
Okay, so just in terms of explaining my own position on this issue as a convener, this one, it was brought to me, I needed to talk through on this as well, given the content of the motion. Councillor Forson has brought this simply on the basis that she's been asked to do something she doesn't have the authority for. It would only be for the council to do it, which is why it's on the agenda. At some point, I am going to ask or invite anybody who wants to put forward the doing part of the motion, which is the two bits in dark bold 1 and 2, which is what has been asked of the council leader that she doesn't have the authority to do. So it will be up to somebody in the chamber if they wish to put forward that as a voting motion at some point in this debate.
Hello, member, we're going to get brief as well. Yeah, just ask the question.
So it's worth pointing out that even if that were to happen, it's not something we can enact or make take place. It's simply about adding support to the list of people who seem to have picked that position already. That's all that would be. But I noticed that Councillor Rain's got a hand up to speak, so I'll invite him to do that. But it's trying to understand how we'll conclude this. Councillor Rain.
Yeah, I was confused really in the same way that Councillor Holden was in terms of what we were being asked to do, but obviously a lot of us have spoken about this, and I had real concerns and said that at the time about the kind of level of bids. When looking at the substantial evidence that was provided to put forward, and with the council being somebody that, an entity that has a number of properties in the bid area, I think for due diligence, I'm sorry, Councillor Holden, I don't know what I would write in an amendment for this, but essentially I think it is something that we should at least write to the bids to consider, in terms of, you know, we are a sort of major holders of property within the area. Also, we have a responsibility for generating growth in the town centre area, and it might bar other businesses from coming into the area if they see this high level of bid levies. So we're wanting to encourage as many businesses to come into Clackmannanshire as we can. But not only that, we want to maintain the real rich sort of heritage of businesses that we have in the area. We don't want them to decide to go elsewhere. And I think that really is part of our remit as a council to make sure that that's the case. We've got a substantial number of businesses who have raised a concern to say that they're not happy with this and they may eventually vote with their feet. So while I don't know what an amendment would specifically say, I think I would be inclined to say that, you know, at the least it would be something along the lines of, for council as a main stakeholder in this area, to write to the bids to see if they're willing to review on the basis of so many public concerns.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Coyne.
Yeah, we keep forgetting to use the word alleged in this. We only know of one person that's making a complaint. There's no impetus here for change that I can see. And there's been a defence put up that I can't reveal the names of the people who are on my site because it would breach regulations and what do you call that thing, the Data Protection Act. To that one. No, if there's no co-signed letter coming along demonstrating the support, there's nothing to answer. On the other point of what is the motion asking us to do, very simple, 4 words. Notes, acknowledges, three. Notes, acknowledges and resolves. That's all. That's what the motion is asking us to do. So read those sentences and find out what you're noting, what you're acknowledging, what you're resolving to do. And we've carried out the last part. We have determined the council's position on the request received, which is no position of authority, no vires in this case. I rest my case.
Okay. Councillor McTaggart.
Thanks, Chair. Similar to Councillor Coyne's comment, the words here in bold, significantly disproportionate financial burden. Who says that? Where does it indicate that? We have no support for that statement whatsoever. We're led to believe that this has a relatively high support within the businesses, but there is no evidence of that. Call for this filtration ballot, we didn't have that power. Similarly, we don't have I don't even see the point in writing to the bid. We can write with a recommendation. We could write to the Scottish Government with a recommendation or the UK Government with a recommendation. If we have no power to force that, then what is the point? I think it's just an empty gesture, and I really don't see the point yet. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Law first.
It just might help your amendment that I was thinking you could put in that the council acknowledges they have no power or authority to request when writing, however we have chosen to write. But I think to make that clear that we know we have no power or authority could maybe help in the writing of an amendment to make that clear.
So the status of any letter that came from this council would simply be as a levy payer and nothing else. That's the only status we have in this process. So. Councillor Harrison.
Thanks. I guess I've got a bit of a question for Dennis as the member on the board. So, how many bid members are there? If it's not active,
Quite a few. I might have the exact number here.
I guess where I'm going with that is we've got allegedly 70 bid members signed up to it, but if there's 500 bid members, that's actually not a very high percentage, and we've not got any proof that there's 70 because, and I know it's been asked for by the leader of the council and by the bid board. So I'm just asking for a bit of clarification.
The electorate consists of 246 properties. For the purposes of head count, the number of voters was 209.
Right, okay. I guess I'm a bit confused with what this is asking us to do and what we can, well, I'm not confused about what we as a council can do. We can't do anything, but I'm a bit confused as to where this is going, if I'm being perfectly honest. Why this, I understand why it's been brought forward. Councillor Forson's been asked to bring it forward, but actually it's, for me, it's actually something that we can't do anything on. It's...
So I'll give notice of amendment.
Deviant it away, but I think because Daphne asked me to do this as leader of the council, that's where the problem was. If she'd asked me to do it as a local ward member, I'd have been more than happy to write to the board of the bid saying I've been contacted by local constituents who, you know, have expressed their concerns. I hope that you'll take them into consideration in any deliberations. That's what I'd have done as a local ward member. However, it's different when you're being asked to do that clearly as the leader of the council, because that is then asking the council to take a position on something, which I can't do on behalf of everybody. And I think, as I said earlier, that the easiest thing to do, if there's such strong feeling about it, there's an AGM every year, get yourself voted onto the board of the bid, and then put forward the amendments. That's the simplest way to do it. But we can't do that. But you know, others can if they feel that strongly about it. So hopefully we can hear Councillor Holden's amendment, which might help.
Councillor Holden, do you want to submit an amendment?
Right, sorry. Would be council advice. Council agrees to write to Alloa First requesting they consider the request for an alteration ballot. My reasoning behind that is that now we're talking about there is information in there. There is information there such as £624, the highest town bid levy in Scotland at that level, the NDR level. There's a 30% increase for Bandy levy payers from 24 to 20. So there are a number of issues there that have been raised, notwithstanding the fact that there's an unwillingness on their part to share details about membership and who's actually buying into that. I do know there are a number of businesses just from local knowledge and engaging with them. And this, I think this amendment would acknowledge what the council does have the power to do, which is simply to write and to say, we've had a request, do you want to consider, please consider this request. It's courteous, it doesn't enter any of the debate around whether there's been a disproportionate level, significantly disproportionate financial burden imposed. We've got our own views on that, but it wouldn't be appropriate to put that in a letter from the council. But I think to ask for Alloa First to consider the request for an alteration ballot is reasonable. And if they don't do that, then we've done what we need to do, and then these people would have to go down a different avenue to try to achieve the outcome that they want to achieve, which has been described by the council leader already, which would be attendance at EGMs, etc., and seeking kind of membership.
So just to clarify, that would not be a request from the council?
No.
It's a request to consider the request from this group?
Well, Alloa First consider the request for an alteration ballot. So we're asking them to make a decision whether they want to do it or not. We're not telling them what to do, and we're not telling them what our views are on it. We're simply just saying we've been asked and the council have agreed to do that, and it's up to them. If they don't want it, they can consider it and come to the same conclusion. It's up to them. But I think it's a more neutral way of dealing with it. It might be helpful for us.
Okay, so we've got the amendment from Councillor Holden. We've heard his rationale and argument for putting it forward. We have a seconder for that position.
Yeah, I can second it. I'm happy to second it.
Coyne, thanks.
Should I second?
So, would you prefer Councillor Rennie to second?
No, I'm only thinking in terms of my seat on the board. I don't know if there's any council.
But you also
Dennis.
the initial motion, so...
Well, I think we'll take the seconder from Councillor Rennie. So the amendment is now open to debate. Does anyone want to debate it? Councillor Law.
Where's the other one that's on? It was just something that Councillor Forson sent from. So is this us, council, or are we saying should it be from this group? Is it, what's it, unfair naming? Should it be them that we're writing to say, would you consider a ballot on behalf of unfair naming rather than the council?
We're asking them to consider the request of this group.
Yeah, so I think, can I amend the amendment to be that it would be from, the request would be from unfair naming rather than...
That's what we've said. But if I bear to what I said, it's council agrees to write to our first requesting that they consider the request for an alteration ballot. The request is not from us, the request is from these parties here. So
yeah, so like from the request from unfair naming.
Yes.
Yeah. So do I pose an amendment to the amendment then? Is that, or is that? Yeah.
Sorry.
So what we're asking them to do is to do what they've done already and review the request and turn it down. So we're asking them to review it again. But they've already turned it down. They've already said, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong because you're on the board. The board have already said they are not going to revisit it. So we're going to ask them to revisit the decision that they've already made.
Yes.
Do we know that they've already considered it? Don't you really know because I just told you.
So I hope that was the confidential, Dennis.
Dennis, remember, minutes here.
But do you see where I'm going with that? They've done it. They've already I believe they've already.
So we're having debates right across the chamber here, a variety of different ways. So I've lost track myself of where we've got to. Councillor Forson.
Yeah, so in the spirit of debating the amendment, I think that's a fair enough amendment. As a local ward member, that's exactly what I would have done. So I have no problem with agreeing the amendment to ask the bid board to consider the request for an alteration by the group. And it's up to them to decide what to do in that case.
So the question that's been asked now is, do we want to append the request to our letter to make it clear in terms of where this has come from and what it is that we're supporting?
I can do that with someone else. Sorry, it's an amendment, it's not a motion.
Okay, any other debate on the amendment? I'll be happy to support the amendment. Anybody against? Okay, Councillor Forson, do you want to try and sum up what's in it?
I'll give it a go. No, welcome the discussion, and it's good that we've reached a position which my understanding is that the council will write to the Alloa First Board asking them to consider the request from Daphne Hamilton on behalf of Unfair Mayor to consider an alteration ballot in relation to the levy rate.
Okay, thank you. We're happy to pass the paper, the motion subject to the amendment. We got it, I think. Okay, final item on the agenda, item 14, motion to the council from Councillor Bolton.
Thanks, Convener. I'm grateful for the support being provided to the production of the motion. The motion is that Council agrees to undertaking a quality impact assessment of school transport policies, which shall be brought back to Council for consideration within a period of 3 months. I need some support here because I've realised that the timescale, that this was 3-month timescale was based on the quarterly cycle of meetings, but in actual fact, my understanding is that we may not meet that requirement until the next meeting, which is in May. Somebody's going to have to amend the motion, and I'm happy to have that amended if members are willing to support it. I'll speak to the motion first, obviously, just now, just so everybody's clear. I'm not going to go into any great detail about this because it's simply that, well, there's been discussions, cross-party discussions. I've discussed it with council. She knows what my concerns are. We have some concerns around the school transport policy. Let's clarify. I've got some concerns about the school transport policy, some aspects of it, that it may be contrary to our stated aim of equality. And that's why I think that now I'd asked them for information on the equality impact assessment, which would have been done as part of the production of transport policy. And I think my understanding is that it's silent on that particular issue, which is nevertheless an important one, and it's about the provision of school transport for denominational schools. So I don't want to enter in a big debate about whether it's right, because that's why I'm asking for the impact assessment. If the quality impact assessment comes back and says, look, here are the issues, we've reviewed them, we're satisfied that it's fair and it's above board, and it brings it back to council, we're willing to support that, then there's nothing else to be said about it. But I have an obligation, which I've given to a constituent, to look into the matter, and I do have concerns about it. There are some real strange things because of the fact it's a denominational school, and there's some which I think could be challengeable in terms of equality legislation. So that's the purpose of the motion. I hope you support that, subject to someone hopefully amending it to bring it with me, perhaps to amend it along the lines of bringing it back to the next council meeting. That's it.
Okay, thanks. Do we have a seconder for the motion from Councillor Holden? Councillor Coyne, thank you.
Make an amendment to that, please, convener. Can we amend it? Thanks, Fiona. Can we amend it to say to bring it back at the May council meeting? Because the 3 months that you've stated is unrealistic. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Law. So to debate, anyone to debate it any further? Councillor Lindsay.
Yeah, just to say we've no issue with the request. It's always helpful to bring back EQIA or transport policies to have a look and review, as we've outlined earlier. I would just take the opportunity to highlight that we've got what we believe is an equal policy already in place, but as I say, I'm happy to look at it. But we certainly would say that we've got, if not the most generous transport policies in the country, certainly we're up there. So just to reinforce that point, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Opportunity to sum up?
No, just to say to thanks members for getting this issue looked at, and I mean I'm going to reserve judgment on it until we get it back, and hopefully then it'll be resolved, and that's the end of it.
Okay, those in favour of the motion now amended, please show. Okay, motion made, the motion is carried. Thankfully, that's the end of the agenda. It was a double this afternoon. Apologies for some of that. Thanks very much for your contribution and to the officers for the patience to sit through half of this, but for the work went into papers beforehand as well. Thanks.